All right. Hi, everyone. Welcome to our training this afternoon. Thank you all for being here. My name is Iris Wen. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I am the FRC training coordinator. We are excited to kick off our spring special education training series with Disability Rights California. This is the first of 4 special ed trainings that we'll be hosting with DRC between now and May. And you can check out our upcoming events in our event calendar that we'll put in the chat. This afternoon, we have Mary Rios, Senior Advocate from DRC, to talk about what to know when starting the special ed process with your school district. First, we just want to briefly talk about what the FRC does here in San Mateo County. We serve families who have children with disabilities or special needs between the ages 0 to 22. We are staffed by parents and caregivers of children and young adults with disabilities, and we provide support, information, resources, referrals to navigate the systems. We also offer trainings, support groups, a resource finder, and a monthly e-newsletter. I want to give a disclaimer that the FRC is not a legal firm or legal services agency, and we cannot provide any legal advice. Any information provided by the FRC should not be considered a means of taking the place of legal advice that must be obtained through an attorney. We invite you all to connect with us, and we'll put our contact information in the chat. And I also want to introduce our team who is here with us this afternoon. We have Patricia Idrugo, FRC Supervisor. Next, we just want to briefly go over some housekeeping items to make sure that this training runs smoothly. We will be recording this training for any families and providers who weren't able to attend, so we ask for your collaboration with the following guidelines. Please mute yourself when not speaking to avoid any background noise. You can have your video on or off based on your preference and comfort level, and we invite your respect throughout this training. We are offering simultaneous interpretation in Spanish today. So if you haven't already, please select the language that you would like to listen to this presentation in the settings bar under the globe icon, and select either English or Spanish. We ask, even if you're listening in English, please still select English, and this will allow you to hear the interpreter translate from Spanish to English as needed. We will have a Q&A portion at the end of the training. Please save your questions for the end. We encourage you to take notes and write down your questions as they come up so you don't forget them. You can use the chat box or raise hand feature for any questions and comments. We encourage you to refrain from sharing names or detailed information to protect your privacy and other families' privacies. And after you ask a question, please be mindful of making some pauses to allow our interpreters enough time to translate both the question and the answer. At the end of the training, we will be distributing a survey both in English and Spanish to collect your feedback on how this training went. It will be anonymous and will help us understand how to improve our trainings for you all. And last, we will be sending a follow-up email tomorrow with the materials from this training. Okay, and now I'll turn it over to Lonnie from Disability Rights California. Thank you.
Thank you, Iris. Welcome, everyone, and thank you for having us today. We're very excited and appreciate your time for being here. So Disability Rights California was formerly known as Protection and Advocacy. We are a nonprofit organization founded in 1978. We are federally mandated to provide legal services to people with disability. Some of the services and issues we work on can be anything from special education, public benefits, regional center services, employment, services from the Department of Rehab, and so forth. We have offices in Sacramento, Los Angeles, Bay Area, San Diego, and then our smaller offices are in the Fresno, Ontario, and Modesto. So today is your presenter, Mary Rios, our senior advocate, who will go over things you should know. I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to her. Thank you.
Thank you, Lonnie. I just wanted to turn my camera on really quick to say hi. I'm going to turn off my camera. I don't want to lose, I don't want the internet to interrupt while I'm sharing. It tends to do that sometimes. So give me a second here, and I'm going to go ahead and share the information. Maybe you can all let me know if you see it.
Yes, looks good.
Okay, great. So today we are going to talk about things you should know when you're entering into the special education process. And what we're going to cover are patterns to look for in the learning process, the diagnostic framework. We're also going to cover the learning process in terms of the assessments or evaluations that the school district may complete. We're going to talk about early intervention transition requirements, eligibility for 3 to 5 years of age. We're also going to talk about transition planning with the school district and the regional center. We're going to discuss a sample letter, which is a request for an assessment when you suspect that your child has a disability or feel that the school district should complete an assessment to determine eligibility for special education. We have an assessment plan. It's a sample. We'll go over the assessment plan, services that are available for preschool age children. We're going to discuss educational placement, what is an appropriate placement, and then finally we're going to discuss 17 tips. There are special education advocacy tips, and we've included some resources, which are terms you should become familiar with as you go through the special education process. So patterns to look for when a child is in their early ages, when they're, ages 1 to 3, during their infancy. And we all know that all children exhibit some of the following behaviors at times, but it is important to separate occasional from when you see a pattern of persistent behavior. And again, when some children exhibit some of these behaviors from time to time, it shouldn't be worrisome. It's when you see a pattern of behaviors that you should look out for. So during their infancy, if you see a pattern of a child, when they have difficulty or trouble with nursing or sucking or digesting, absence of creeping or crawling, resistance to cuddling and body contact, delay in sitting, standing, or walking, lack of response to sounds, excessive response to sounds, delay in learning to talk, and trouble following movements with their eyes. And not everything is in here, so you want to be aware of other patterns that may come up. During their preschool years, things that you should look out for: inability to follow directions, unusual quietness or inactivity, impulsive and uncontrolled behavior, excessive craving for sweets, excessive crying, and undisturbed sleep, poor eating habits, poor sense of rhythm, uneven walking when they're walking, if they're walking unevenly, constant interrupting and persistent chatter, fear of swings and slides, excessive repetition in speaking, questioning, or playing, tendency to become more upset with people around them than when alone, frequent falls and tendency to bump into things, language problems as evidenced by delayed talking and garbled speaking. So these are again things that when the child is small, you should, and as they grow up, to be mindful of some of the, some children may exhibit things, some other children may not. In their school years, poor handwriting, excessive activity which seems purposeless, restless and undirected, unusual inactivity characterized by daydreaming and inner distraction. I'm not going to go through all these here, but these are things that, you know, you may notice that they have difficulties during, when they're younger, and as they grow older, again, you may see a pattern: confused sense of time or distance, good verbal ability, but trouble in reading, emotional instability, explosions for no apparent reason, excessive gullibility, erratic schoolwork. And then, these are things to look out for. Um, So what we wanted to include was the learning process and the diagnostic framework within the school district. So when these are some assessments, some evaluations that the school district may complete if they suspect a child may qualify for special education, but we wanted to include these different tests so that you can identify what the test covers, what they're looking for. For example, in process definition tests, which give information on cognition and intelligence, ability to reason, to think abstractly and to solve problems. They have different types of tests that are conducted. Yeah, I think it's a matter of trying to once you suspect that the disability, you may want to have a conversation with the school district, and let them know the patterns that you see. What is it that your concerns are? You want to make sure that the school district assesses. They basically complete a psychoeducational evaluation. But if there are other areas that you're concerned with, you definitely want to have that discussion with the school district. The Kaufman Assessment Battery for Children. These again, these are tests that the school district completes in language, receptive verbal language, ability to understand incoming spoken language, um, process definition tests, which give information on auditory comprehensive comprehension, sorry about that, comprehension of language, um, listening comprehension, expressive verbal language, ability to convey ideas and relate information through oral language. Again, these are tests there's the Woodcock-Johnson tests. Um, they look at the expressive vocabulary tests. They look at receptive nonverbal language, ability to derive meaning from pictures, gestures, and facial expressions, and to interpret social situations without verbal cues. So these are just some of the tests that the school district may do in terms of auditory skills. What is it that they're looking for? When they do these kinds of tests, they look at the auditory analysis, ability to break words into syllables and or discrete sound components. Um, Auditory synthesis, so ability to combine supplied sounds or syllables into words. Again, these are some of the tests that the school district may complete. Process definition tests, which give information on auditory remote memory, ability to store and recall auditory material heard several months or years earlier. Visual skills, visual discrimination, ability to detect subtle likenesses and differences in visual stimuli, such as symbols, pictures, and designs. So you're going to get this information in visual skills. You'll have all this material so you can review it. I don't want to go through each one of these, but this is really good information for you to identify the type of assessment that they're going to be doing and what it is that they're going to cover. So the next section that we're going to go to is the early intervention transition requirements. So once the school district completes the assessment, we're going to cover that in a few minutes. But the early intervention transition requirements, here we've included chapter 12. When the child is going through the transition from regional center to the school district, I'm going to recommend that everybody look at this chapter. It tells you everything you need to know about transitioning from the regional center to the school district. But here, my child is turning 3 years old soon and will go to public school next year. What are the early intervention transition requirements? So here we have, and this is actually part of our chapter 12 publication from our manual. So it says, for children who have participated in Part C programs, which is early intervention, and who are eligible for preschool services, the state must assure a smooth and effective transition. What does that mean? What it means is that when they're getting ready to transition to the school district, there should be a meeting that's held with the school district, the regional center, and the parents. And this is basically to discuss the transition, to let the school district know that the child will be transitioning to the school district. This meeting should take place at least 3 months before the child turns 3. So for children who may be eligible for these preschool services, the lead agency must convene a conference with the parents and the school district at least 90 days or up to sometimes the regional center will hold the meeting or start having these discussions at least 6 months before the child turns 3. So that's important to note as well. And here we've included the the Code of Federal Regulations. And again, it indicates what the school's responsibility is and what the regional center's responsibility is. So 6 months before the child's 3rd birthday, the service coordinator must notify the parent of a child who may be eligible for special education preschool services. And that transition planning will occur within the next 3 to 6 months. They notify again the school district that there will be an IFSP meeting, an individual family support planning meeting, at least 3 months before the child turns 3. Everyone must agree on a date. They usually provide this in writing, at least 30 days after the service coordinator's notice. So they should hold the meeting within 30 days. For children who may not be eligible for special education, a transition plan must still be developed by the lead agency, the family and relevant service providers. Regardless of Part C requirements, the school district must follow federal and state special education requirements, such as child fine. Child fine means there's what's called child fine law, which means that the school district's responsibility is to seek out children who may qualify for special education in private schools, in public schools, children who are unhoused, children who are state of the ward. So the school district's responsibility is to identify children who may qualify for special education. Eligibility for 3 to 5 years of age, we've included this chapter here as well. It's information on basic rights. It's a really good chapter for parents to become familiar with what the school district's responsibility is. Prior to this, let me see. I don't know. Yeah, maybe I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing and share another. Give me 1 second because I think it's really important to identify. Let me see here. Sorry about that. So we're going to start talking about the ages 3 to 5 when a child is transitioning from the regional center to the school district. But we also thought it was important to let people know that just because the child is going to turn 3 doesn't mean that they may not qualify for a regional center. They may not qualify for early start anymore. But if the child has a developmental disability, they may continue to qualify. They may qualify for regional center services. They also we've included this facts about provisional eligibility for Lanterman, under the Lanterman Act. So just know that when the child is going to be transitioning from early intervention to the school district, they may qualify for regional center services. Now, the regional center many times will tell parents, you no longer qualify for regional center services. However, know that the regional center still has a responsibility of assessing if the child has a developmental disability. So what is provisional eligibility? If a child who is 3 or 4 years of age is not eligible for regional center services due to not meeting the definition of a developmental disability, they may be considered for provisional eligibility. A child is provisionally eligible for regional center services if the child has, one, a disability that is not solely physical in nature, and two, significant functional limitations in at least two of the following areas of major life activity as determined by a regional center and as appropriate to the age of the child. So they would have to meet two of these 5 areas here: self-care, receptive and expressive language, learning, mobility, or self-direction. So this falls under provisional eligibility, and we're going to provide you with a copy of this information as well. So I wanted to share that as well. The other thing that I wanted to share is, give me a second here, sorry about this. Bear with me here for a second. So the other thing I wanted to share was our rights under the Lanterman Act, which is Chapter 2. And here it will tell you what is the eligibility criteria for becoming a client of the Regional Center. And it goes into what is a developmental disability, and it gives you the response and can someone with a developmental disability apply for Regional Center services. We have an entire manual that talks about the rights under the Lanterman Act. But I wanted to share this information. I thought it was important when the child is going through that transition of early intervention to the school district where the child may have a developmental disability and may still qualify for regional center services. Again, we're going to share this information with you at the end. So I am going to go back to the materials. Okay, so we're going to talk about eligibility for 3 to 5 years of age. What are the eligibility criteria for children from age 3 to 5 years of age? So again, the regional center has a meeting with the parents and the school district to discuss the transition from early intervention to the school district. Now, in order to be eligible for special education, a child must have one of the following disabling conditions, which is autism, blindness, deafness, emotional disturbance, hearing impairment, intellectual disability, multiple disabilities, orthopedic impairment, other health impairment, attention deficit disorder, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, Tourette syndrome, but also know that just because a child may have a disability, it doesn't mean that they would automatically qualify for special education. The assessments that are completed also have to show that the disability it adversely impacts their learning. So that's one important key to keep in mind as well. In addition to having one or more of the qualifying conditions, a child must need specifically designed instruction or services to qualify for special education, and must also have needs that cannot be met with modification of a regular environment in the home or school, or both, without ongoing monitoring or support as determined by an IEP team. And here we have the California Education Code. A child is not eligible for special education and services if he or she does not otherwise meet the eligibility criteria and his or her educational needs are due primarily to, and here they included, unfamiliar unfamiliarity with the English language, temporary physical disabilities, social maladjustment, or environmental, cultural, or economic factors. So again, it's a matter of meeting what are the criteria here, and also whether the disability adversely impacts their learning. So again, here we covered the transition planning with the school. We've included chapter 12, what happens at the transition planning meeting. It requires that the parent, school district, and regional center discuss possible preschool special education services as well as these transition steps. Sorry, including discussions regarding future placements and other matters related to the child's transition, including parent training, procedures to prepare the child for changes in service delivery and adjustments to new settings, and transmission of information and records to the school district. In addition, law requires that parents are provided information about community services that are available within their community. Information about the child is sent to the school district, including the IFSPs, with the parent's consent, and any necessary assessments by the district and regional center to determine eligibility and the timeliness for completing assessments. There are timelines for this that the school district has to comply with, and we'll talk about those in a little bit. Steps are also taken to ensure that the referral to the district is received in enough time so that the assessments are completed and an IEP implemented by the child's third birthday. That is really key to know. It's important. Referral to the district occurs no later than the time a child reaches 2 years and 9 months, or before the district's break in services if the child will turn 3 during that break. And the people responsible for convening an IEP and final IFSP meeting are identified. We're going to start getting into, so once the regional center, the school district, and the parents have the meeting, if they're not a regional center client, all the parent needs to do is either they can submit a letter requesting an assessment to the school district, and it would be the home school district that is, which is a school district in your area. So the parent, if a parent gets a referral from the doctor or a nurse, parent, anybody can make a referral to have the child assessed for special education. Here we've included a sample letter, and we basically included it here, and you can address it to the school. We always say, and we recommend that you always CC the school district. You can send it to the home school, but always CC the school district. And why do you want to do that? You want to do that because many times if you send it to the school, and unfortunately, sometimes nothing happens. If you send a copy to the school district, the local school will know that somebody else received it, and may, that way they start initiating the process in terms of sending an assessment plan and following the timelines. So you address it to the school and you basically identify this is regarding your child's name. You can address it either to the principal, to the director of special education, a teacher, anybody at the school. You basically identify your child's name, the name of the school, that you suspect that they may qualify for special education. It doesn't have to be in depth. It could be a very general letter, basically saying that you suspect that your child may qualify for special education. If you know of a specific area that you want your child to be assessed in, I would definitely include that in the request for an assessment. So you're looking for a standard special education assessment that looks at cognition, psychological processing, and academic achievement, none of which may be deficient in studying in a student qualifying for one of the above 3 categories. Again, if you know of a specific assessment that you want to request, you'd certainly want to include that in here. Let's say, for example, your child is having difficulty with using their hands, or having a difficult time in eating. The child may need an assessment for occupational therapy. So you want to request an occupational therapy assessment. If they need physical therapy, you may want to request a physical therapy assessment. The other thing I think is really important is that if the child is nonverbal, what I always do is recommend to parents to request an evaluation for a non-oral communications specialist. I think this is really important because a child may benefit from an augmentative communication device. It could be something as simple as maybe an iPad that has the appropriate program that a child can use. So I think that's really key if the child is nonverbal, to ask for it's called an assistive technology for communications. So you definitely want to include an assessment for assistive technology. The other thing that I suggest is you may also want to request that your child not be evaluated under Section 4. You may want them to be evaluated, but if the child is going to qualify for special education, I also think it's really important to either invite the 504 coordinator. And the reason for that is because a child may benefit from either accommodations or modifications, accommodations where the student may need to either sit in front of the classroom or a specific seating area, or need some accommodations where they either get breaks or maybe even modifications. Let's say that you want to request that that they modify the student's homework or work. You can also request modifications in terms of like homework. Instead of the student receiving 20 questions in a specific subject matter, they reduce that amount to maybe 10. These are just examples. So you want to include, so once you request that the child be assessed for special education, the school district is supposed to provide you with an assessment plan within 15 days of them receiving your request for the child to be assessed. Once you receive the assessment plan, and here we have a sample, it indicates whether it's an initial assessment, an annual assessment, triannual, or transition. An interim, it's addressed to the parents of the student's name, the date, the school district, the name of the school, the grade, birth date, primary language, and it has here parent signature. If it was a referral, then they document that on here. But these are basically some of the standard assessments that are completed: the academic achievement, health, intellectual developmental evaluation that is done, language and speech, communication development. They have a list of different assessments that are completed, which are typically part of the psychoeducational evaluation. They should also indicate who is going to be completing the assessments. And if you agree, you can sign the assessment. One of the things that we usually recommend is that you include down in the comments area, or you can also submit an additional letter, an email, basically asking for the school district to provide you copies of the assessment reports once they're completed, at least 5 days before the IEP meeting. And why do you want to do that? You want to do that because you want to have an opportunity to review the assessments in their entirety. You want to see what they are saying in terms of their academic achievement, what you basically what they identify what the present levels of performance are, and what recommendations they're making. You don't want to wait until you're at the IEP meeting to receive those copies, not being given the opportunity to review them. Um, and because what can happen is, many times parents will receive an assessment and say, wait a minute, they're identifying a student here that I don't recognize. My child can do this. Parents can disagree with the assessment that the school district provides. So let's say, for example, that your child is being assessed for the first time to see if they qualify for special education. And the evaluation comes back and it indicates that your child does not qualify for special education. You don't have to agree to that assessment. You can request an independent assessment at public expense, which means the school district has two options. They either have to approve the independent assessment, or if they deny the independent assessment, they would have to initiate due process and show that the assessment that they completed was an appropriate one. Many times when parents request an independent assessment, the school district will provide them a list of evaluators. You do not have to select somebody on that list. If you know of a specific evaluator, you can certainly talk to the evaluator that you want. Well, one of the things that you want to do, though, is make sure that you find out what the school district pays the type of evaluator for the evaluation you're requesting. There was a situation where the school district had approved an evaluation for a parent, and she went with somebody outside of who the school was recommending, and not knowing what the difference in price was, and there was a $3,000 difference. So you want to make sure that the price is comparable to what the school pays for that particular assessment. Services available for preschool age child. Here we included chapter 13. Here we have services must meet the unique needs of your child in accordance with federal law. Your child's IEP must include these services and a statement of areas of need. An instructional program and or related services may be provided to address those unique needs. The rights and services for 3 to 5-year-old children under IDEA or Individuals with Disabilities Education Act are the same as those for children aged 5 to 22. Services may include observation and monitoring of the child, activities developed to conform with the child's IEP and to enhance the child's development, consultation with family, preschool teachers, and other service providers, assistance to parents in coordinating services, opportunities for the child to develop play and pre-academic skills and self-esteem, access to developmentally appropriate equipment and specialized materials. What I would recommend is that if it's your first IEP, you definitely want to review our chapter 4 of our special education rights and responsibilities manual. And here is some of the information. And if we have time at the end, I'll show you where you can find that information on our website. Educational placement is really important. Again, here in chapter 4, it talks about what kinds of educational placements must the school district offer. But in discussing placements for the first time, say your child is assessed, they determine that the child does qualify for special education. Remember, always keep in mind that the assessments are what basically drive the placement and the supports and services that the child needs. School districts must offer a continuum of alternative placements. These placements could include instruction, which should be the first thing that the school district offers or looks at. They should look at the regular education classroom. They need to see what supports and services does the student need to remain in the general ed class. Many times there are students that need a more restrictive environment, such as a special day class. But the first discussion that should take place is the general ed placement, to be with their typical non-disabled peers. So they have to look at what supports and services does the student need to remain in the general ed. They also need to look at related services. What are related services? They could consist of occupational therapy, speech therapy, physical therapy. You want to make sure that these related services are very specific in terms of the IEP. How many times a week? How many minutes per session? Are they going to be provided twice a week? It should be very specific in terms of how many times and how many minutes. And that should be documented in the IEP. Resource specialist services, in which a school resource specialist provides specialized instruction and services to students who spend more than half their day in a regular classroom. Let's say a student needs help with reading. They can provide a resource class to get that extra assistance that the student needs in reading. Is it going to be pull out, or is it going to be somebody coming into the classroom? Again, it should be very specific in terms of what type of resource the school district is going to provide. Special classes that serve students with similar and more intensive educational needs. This could be a special day class. State special schools, such as the California School for the Deaf and California School for the Blind. It's all based on what the needs of the students, what the needs of the student are. Home instruction in hospitals or institutions such as medical facilities, state hospitals, and developmental centers and juvenile schools. There are times when, because of health reasons, a student may be at home. The school district can provide home instruction as well, where they send a teacher to the home if the student, for some reason, is having health issues and cannot get to the school physically. Placement in appropriate non-public, non-sectarian schools when no appropriate public school placement is available. There are non-public schools. However, what the law says is that the school district should provide a free and appropriate public education in the least restrictive environment, meaning, of course, when appropriate, a general ed class. If they cannot be in a special day class, then they have to look at other more restrictive placements, such as non-public schools. I think it's a matter of having that discussion with the school district, asking them to give you options to go look at the placement first is really important. You definitely want to go visit the placement to see if it is an appropriate placement for your child. Out of home residential placement, including non-medical care and room and board when educationally appropriate or when the only appropriate school is too far away from your home. Excuse me. Itinerant instruction in classroom, resource rooms, and settings other than classrooms where specifically designed instruction may occur. Instruction using telecommunications. That has occurred in the past where a student wasn't able to participate fully in school, and they provided education through telecommunication. Instruction in settings other than classrooms where specifically designed instruction may occur. So I think the important thing to think about is, what is the appropriate placement for your child? And typically discussion again should start with a general ed classroom, and in looking at what supports and services does the child need to remain in the general ed. I know that many parents have had difficulty on many occasions when the child needs an instructional aid, but that too should be considered if the child can remain in the general ed class with an instructional aid. The other thing to consider is if if let's say that you don't know what type of a placement is an appropriate placement, the school districts can evaluate, and when they do the evaluation, it's basically called an inclusion specialist. The inclusion specialist will do an assessment to determine what the appropriate placement is for the student. So that's something to keep in mind as well. Students may be enrolled in special classes only when the nature of severity of the disability of the student is such that education in regular classes with the use of supplementary aids and services, including curriculum modification and behavioral support, cannot be achieved satisfactorily. So again, one of the things that you want to look at is what is it that the student needs? I mean, there are some children that have behavioral issues. That's another thing that, um, if the student is having some behaviors, you may want to have the child assessed where they do a functional behavior evaluation to look at what is triggering the behaviors and to try to address and implement a positive behavior support plan. Here we've included special education advocacy tips. This is one of our publications. It's a really good tool if you're preparing for an IEP meeting. You want to organize your child's IEP records. Look at the IEP. Look at the goals and objectives are really important. You want to make sure that as they develop goals at the IEP meeting, that they are appropriate goals. And remember that supports and services is something to look at when developing that goal. What supports and services is the student going to need to meet that goal? You want to make sure that they're provided the appropriate services when developing that goal. Request assessments. If your child needs assessments, you can request that the school district complete the assessment. Again, the school district has 15 days once you request an assessment, and once you sign the assessment that you agree to it and return it, the school district has 60 days to complete the assessments and hold an IEP meeting. Again, you don't have to agree to the assessment. You can request an independent evaluation. And if you're going to request an independent evaluation, you may want to put it in writing. I always say that to parents is that whenever you have communication, either if it's by phone, via email, by text, make sure that you document, that you respond in writing. If you get a phone call, you want to follow up with something in writing per our conversation. We discussed A, B, and C. You want to make sure that you're creating that paper trail because you never know when you're going to need it. Hopefully you won't need it, but you never know. So paper trail is really, really important. As for all assessment reports, at least 1 week before the IEP meeting, you want to make sure that you review them in their entirety. Again, the assessments are with drive placement and supports and services. Plan for the IEP meeting with a friend or advocate. If you can take somebody with you to support you, it's always good to do that. Read all assessment reports, identify your aims for the IEP meeting. You want to review your child's current IEP goals if they've already had an IEP. Make sure that they inform you in terms of, has your child reached that goal? If they haven't met the goal, why has the child not met the goal? Do they need some additional supports and services, or does the goal need to be changed? This is really key in preparing for your IEP meeting. You may also want to have the discussion about the option for full inclusion, or increased integration. That's really important as well. And your IEP should indicate how much time this student is going to be in a general ed classroom and how much time the student is going to be in a special day class. Make a list of the points you want to discuss at the IEP meeting. It's really, I hear it's very difficult. It's very intense because there are a lot of people at the IEP meeting. However, um, the the entire IEP team should be there to address the needs of the student. Parents are a major part of the IEP meeting as well. If you plan on recording, you can record the IEP meeting as long as you give 24-hour written notice. You do have to take your own device, your tape recorder, but you do have to notify the school district that you plan on recording the meeting, and you should provide written notice 24 hours before the IEP meeting. During the IEP meeting, again, bring a friend, advocate, or a person who knows your child. Don't be afraid to ask questions and make sure you understand any jargon. I mean, many times they use language that many different parents don't understand. They may use acronyms. You want to make sure that you ask, what does it mean? A lot of school districts do use acronyms, so you want clarity on that. Discuss present levels of your child's performance. Develop annual IEP goals and make sure to set appropriate progress monitoring of the IEP goals. When you develop the goals, usually there is a section in the IEP itself that indicates how they're going to monitor where the progress of the student in terms of a goal that has been identified. You want to make sure that that is checked off. How do you want the school district to report to you, and how often do you want the school district to report to you where the student is in terms of reaching that goal? Identify full inclusion or integration opportunities and the supports needed for success. Describe the placement for your child and identify specific related services and supports. Again, you want to make sure that they describe the placement, and you want to make sure that they identify specifically in terms of related services, how often they're going to provide the service. Is it going to be individualized? Is it going to be in group? These are really important things to look at when developing the IEP, because you want to make sure it's documented. Remember that your IEP is your legal contract. And if it's not written into the IEP, it doesn't exist. So you want to make sure that all supports and services are documented in the IEP. Describe the placement for your child and identify specific related services. Again, sign the IEP only if you agree to it. So you can either agree to the entire IEP. We recommend that you ask when the IEP is finished. You do not sign the IEP. What you want to do is ask for a copy of the IEP, take a copy home, make sure that you review it. And if you agree to it at that point, then you sign it. If you agree to some sections, you want to sign the areas that you do agree with. Take, for example, I agree with placement. I disagree with the services that the school district is offering. So you want to be very clear in terms of what you agree with. If possible, be involved in your child's classroom or school. I know that nowadays it's very difficult to participate or be involved in the school. Support your child in developing friendships with classmates. Monitor your child's progress. Again, you want to make sure that they document in the IEP how they plan on tracking the success of the goal. If the child is not meeting the goal, ask that question. What is it that they're having difficulty with? Do they need additional supports? So you want to make sure, develop a communication system with your child's either service providers or the teacher. You want to have that communication with them. You should write down projected target dates for the child to learn particular skills, such as the dates of the short-term objectives in your child's IEP goals. Options if things don't work out. If you believe that the school district has not followed special education laws or procedures and or has failed to provide services required in a signed IEP, if say for example, you sign the IEP, you agree to it, and the school district is not complying with providing the related services, what are your options? You have the option of trying to resolve it. I always say try to resolve it with the school district first. If you identify that the service has not been provided, let them know. Hey, my child hasn't received their speech therapy in 2 months. Now you owe him for those 2 months that he didn't receive the services. Those are called compensatory services. Again, you may want to try to resolve it with the school. If there is no resolution, what you can do then is file a compliance complaint. We have information in our chapter 6 that talks about the compliance complaint, the due process, and filing a civil rights complaint. So that is our 17 tips. The next thing that we included is special education terms to know. There's a lot of terms to know. These are acronyms like the 504 plan, FAPE, Free and Appropriate Public Education, IDEA, Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, IEP, LRE, which is the least restrictive environment. And then these are agencies to know. There's a lot of information here again. You will all receive this, but I think this is a really good tool. And these are the acronyms for the tests and evaluations. And what else? I believe that's all we included in the materials. So what I want to do now is stop sharing and take you really quickly to, I'm going to share our website really quick. Excuse me.
Do you want me to share, Mary?
I think I got it, Lenny. Can you see it?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, so this is our website. This is our homepage. If you scroll down, you can click on self-advocacy resources, or you can click on resources here, and it is by topic. These are topics that we assist in, a lot of these areas. Department of Rehab, disability-related discrimination. We have regional center publications here, and then we have special education publications here. Down at the bottom, we have our rights under the Lanterman Act, and then we have our special education rights and responsibilities manual. But as you can see here, there are, I believe, 16 chapters, and chapter 12 talks about early intervention services, and chapter 13 talks about information on preschool. And then we have the appendix here that it has sample letters on requesting a referral for an assessment, request for records. It also has information on how to file a compliance complaint. We have a lot of publications on our website. that have to do, if we go back and look at special education, we also have toolkits. Special Education Basics Toolkit. We have Behavior and Discipline Toolkit, Disagreements with the District's Toolkit, and Extended School Year Toolkit. But it has, again, publications under the topic, steps to take after your child with an IEP has been restrained or secluded in school. So I wanted to share our website. There's a lot of publications, but I think our Special Education Rights and Responsibilities Manual is very important. It has all the information that has to do with special education, and I highly suggest that folks look at our website and look at our manual. So with that, I can go ahead and take any questions.
All right, thank you everyone for attending our training this afternoon. We really appreciate you spending part of your afternoon with us and engaging with our guest presenter. Big thank you to Mary and Lonnie from Disability Rights California, and to our interpreters, Sabrina and Clara, for all their hard work. Just as a reminder, we will be sending out a follow-up email tomorrow with the presentation and all the links and materials we put in the chat and mentioned throughout the training. Okay, have a great rest of your day, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Maria. Thank you, Lonnie.
Gracias.
Muchas gracias, everyone. Thank you.